Good evening, and welcome to our discussion this evening. We are convening to explore a profoundly significant and often contentious question. Should critical race theory be part of the K-12 school curriculum? This topic elicits strong opinions and touches upon fundamental aspects of how we understand our history, society, and the education of our children. Joining us to dissect this complex issue are two distinguished guests, Professor Alistair Finch, who advocates for the inclusion of critical race theory, or CRT, believing it offers invaluable insights for students, and Ms. Eleanor Vance, who expresses significant reservations about its application in K-12 settings, citing potential adverse consequences. Our format will begin with opening statements from each speaker, followed by 2 rounds of discussion and rebuttal, and concluding with closing statements.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. It's a privilege to engage in this crucial conversation. Critical race theory, at its core, is an academic framework that originated in legal scholarship in the 1970s and 1980s. It posits that race is not a biologically founded category, but a social construct, historically created and manipulated to maintain power hierarchies. Furthermore, CRT asserts that racism is not merely a product of individual bias or prejudice, but is systemic and institutional, embedded within legal systems and policies. It encourages a critical examination of how race and racism have shaped, and continue to shape, legal systems, societal structures, and cultural narratives. The necessity of incorporating such a lens into K-12 education, appropriately scaffolded for different age groups, of course, stems from a commitment to providing a comprehensive and voracious understanding of our history and society. It is about equipping students with the analytical tools to critically engage with the world around them, to understand the roots of inequality, and to foster a more just and equitable future. This isn't about indoctrination, as some critics erroneously suggest. Rather, it's about fostering intellectual rigor and the capacity for critical inquiry. CRT helps students understand the nuances of power, privilege, and oppression, preparing them to be informed and engaged citizens in an increasingly diverse and interconnected world. To shy away from these discussions is to offer an incomplete and frankly sanitized version of history and contemporary reality, doing a disservice to our students' intellectual development. We must trust our educators to navigate these complex topics with sensitivity and pedagogical skill, ensuring that discussions are age-appropriate and constructive.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes and Professor Finch. I appreciate the opportunity to present a contrasting perspective on this very important matter. While I acknowledge the academic origins of critical race theory, I hold profound concerns regarding its appropriateness and application within the K-12 educational framework. My primary objection is that CRT, when translated into classroom materials and teaching practices, can be inherently divisive. It tends to categorize individuals primarily through the lens of group identity, specifically race, often framing history and social interactions as a perpetual struggle between oppressors and oppressed. This approach, I fear, can inadvertently foster a sense of collective guilt among students from so-called oppressor groups, and a sense of perpetual victimhood among those identified as oppressed. Such outcomes are detrimental to the psychological well-being of children and counterproductive to fostering a cohesive and empathetic school environment. K-12 education should, in my view, prioritize national unity, celebrate individual achievement, and instill universal values such as equality of opportunity, personal responsibility, and respect for all individuals, irrespective of their background. There is a genuine risk that CRT, with its emphasis on systemic failings and historical grievances, can lead to a cynical and biased understanding of our nation's history and its institutions. Instead of empowering students, it might engender resentment, alienate them from their own country, and undermine the very principles of equality it purports to champion. By focusing on immutable characteristics rather than individual character and merit, we must be exceedingly cautious about pedagogical approaches that may oversimplify complex historical narratives or attribute contemporary disparities solely to immutable past injustices, potentially neglecting the agency and progress that have also characterized our journey.
Thank you both for those comprehensive opening statements, which clearly delineate your differing perspectives. Professor Finch, Ms. Vance has raised significant concerns about CRT potentially being divisive and instilling a sense of guilt or victimhood. She argues that the focus should be more on national unity and individual achievement. Could you address how an advocate of CRT would respond to these specific anxieties, particularly the notion that it might inadvertently fragment rather than unite students? And how do you ensure that the historical analysis it promotes doesn't devolve into assigning blame to contemporary students for past injustices?
Those are valid concerns to voice, Dr. Hayes, and I appreciate Ms. Vance articulating them so clearly. The aim of CRT, when applied thoughtfully in education, is not to induce guilt or to assign blame to individuals for historical systems of oppression. Rather, it is to foster an understanding of how these systems were constructed, how they have perpetuated inequality, and how they continue to manifest in contemporary society, often in subtle or unacknowledged ways. Acknowledging systemic issues is not about making a white child feel personally responsible for slavery, for instance. It's about helping all students understand the enduring legacy of such institutions on our societal fabric. True unity, I would contend, cannot be built upon a sanitized or incomplete historical narrative. It must be forged through an honest and courageous confrontation with all facets of our past, the commendable and the condemnable. It's about understanding structures, not vilifying individuals. The focus is on critical analysis and systemic change, not individual shaming.
Professor, while I appreciate your articulation of the ideal, the practical application of CRT in K-12 classrooms often falls short of this nuanced vision. We've seen instances where curricula, purportedly inspired by CRT, have indeed led to young children being asked to identify themselves within racial hierarchies, or to confess their privilege or complicity in ways that are deeply inappropriate for their developmental stage. This isn't fostering critical thinking. It's imposing a specific, often pessimistic worldview that can be incredibly damaging to a child's sense of self and their perception of others. How do you guard against the very real possibility of misinterpretation and maladministration by educators who may not possess the extensive theoretical grounding you do, leading to precisely the kind of guilt and division we fear? Is it truly fair to burden young children with the complexities of systemic critique before they have a firm grasp of individual agency and shared national identity?
Ms. Vance, you've highlighted concerns about the practical implementation and potential psychological impact on children. Professor Finch argues that CRT provides essential tools for understanding systemic inequality and achieving genuine unity through acknowledging difficult truths. If not through a framework like CRT, how do you propose K-12 education should address historical injustices and the ongoing realities of racial disparities in a way that is both honest and constructive? What role should education play in fostering social awareness and a commitment to equality if it avoids the analytical lens CRT offers?
Dr. Hayes, addressing historical injustices and fostering social awareness are undeniably crucial components of a robust education. Our disagreement lies in the methodology. We can, and should, teach comprehensively about difficult periods in our history, including slavery, segregation, and discrimination, without resorting to the divisive framework of CRT. Curricula should emphasize the progress our nation has made in overcoming these injustices, highlighting the contributions of individuals from all backgrounds who fought for equality and justice, thereby inspiring students with positive role models and a sense of hope. The focus should be on individual responsibility, mutual respect, and the enduring American ideal that all individuals are created equal and should be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. We can teach about systemic barriers of the past and present, without labeling entire groups as inherently privileged or oppressed in perpetuity, and without diminishing the importance of individual effort and resilience.
Ms. Vance, while I concur with the importance of teaching about progress and individual responsibility, I fear that approach alone risks glossing over the deeply entrenched, systemic nature of many persistent inequalities. Simply highlighting progress without critically examining the underlying structures that continue to disadvantage certain groups can lead to a superficial understanding and a premature sense of mission accomplished. CRT is not about diminishing individual effort. It's about recognizing that the playing field has never been, and in many ways still isn't, level. It aims to empower students with the knowledge that societal structures can be unjust, but also that they can be changed through informed collective action. Understanding different perspectives and lived experiences, particularly those of marginalized communities, is essential for developing empathy and the critical skills needed to dismantle those remaining barriers, not to indoctrinate or assign blame. It's about providing a more complete toolkit for social analysis, which is a cornerstone of higher-level thinking. In closing, I want to reiterate that the thoughtful incorporation of critical race theory's core tenets into K-12 education is not an exercise in blame or an attempt to sow division. On the contrary, it is a commitment to intellectual honesty and to preparing our students for the complexities of the world they inhabit and will inherit. Providing young people with a framework to understand how race has operated, and continues to operate, as a social and political construct, allows them to critically assess societal structures and power dynamics. This understanding is fundamental to fostering a genuinely equitable and just society, one where historical context informs our present and future actions. An education that shies away from these critical inquiries is an incomplete one, leaving students ill-equipped to navigate or change a world still grappling with the legacies of racial inequality. Therefore, I advocate for a nuanced, age-appropriate, and pedagogically sound approach to curriculum development that embraces critical inquiry and empowers students to become informed, compassionate, and engaged citizens, capable of building a more inclusive future for all.
In my concluding remarks, I must re-emphasize the profound reservations many parents, educators, and I share regarding the integration of critical race theory into K-12 curricula. While proponents like Professor Finch present an idealized version, the reality of its application often manifests as a divisive ideology that categorizes children by race, fostering resentment and a sense of immutable group identity over individual merit and shared humanity. Our educational system's primary objective should be to unite students, equipping them with foundational knowledge, critical thinking skills applicable across all disciplines, and a belief in their own potential to succeed through effort and character. Introducing concepts that can lead to feelings of collective guilt or perpetual victimhood is, I believe, counterproductive to the healthy development of young minds and detrimental to the fabric of a cohesive society. We must champion an educational approach that celebrates our commonalities, teaches an unvarnished but balanced history, and inspires all students to strive for excellence and contribute positively to our nation, rather than viewing society solely through the prism of power struggles and group oppression.
Professor Finch, Ms. Vance, thank you both for an exceptionally insightful and robust debate this evening. You have articulated your positions with clarity and conviction, highlighting the profound complexities and deeply held beliefs surrounding the role of critical race theory in K-12 education. It's evident that this is not an issue with straightforward answers, touching as it does on our interpretations of history, our vision for society, and our aspirations for our children's education. We hope this discussion has provided our audience with a richer understanding of the different perspectives and encourages further thoughtful reflection on this important matter. Thank you for joining us.